Good morning, everybody. Is this okay? It is, okay. Oh, my thing. Yeah, the thing. Good. What we do is we design, we build, and we operate indoor farms. But actually, I would like to start with a quote of Steve Jobs, who said some months, I think, before he died, that the most important things in the next century will happen at the intersection of biology and technology, and that's exactly the place where we love to be. You know this guy, probably. It's an astronaut. His name is Mark Watney, and in the film The Martian, he was left behind when the crew was flying back to Earth. They thought he was dead, but he wasn't dead at all. And then he went back to the space station, and he was looking for food, and then he found some potatoes in the refrigerator. And actually, he became one of the first indoor farmers, not on this planet, but then at least in the galaxy. And he built an indoor farm with his own hands. So we consider him, Mark, to be one of our colleagues. And then he's speaking with Houston, of course. He's reporting what is happening and that how his yield is going on and that he's doing fine. And actually, this is pretty much the same as what we are doing. We are connected with what we call Houston Control as well. We can have a look in the farm on a longer distance, and we control all the parameters actually that are involved in growing crops. Differences in The Martian, it was science fiction, and today actually what we are doing is not fiction anymore. It's really happening. That's what we do. This is a picture of our latest farm. We have built quite a number of these in the Netherlands, but also in Germany, in South Africa, a small one, in the United States. And every time that we build a new one, we have learned so much from the older ones that we keep improving and improving and improving. So this one that you're looking at is a really small one actually, but it's a huge step in the whole development. And this is version 10 from the indoor farmings that we have built. And we started back in 2005 where we built the first one. We are, as Eva already said, in an old Philips building. The whole area actually is buildings and factories that were used in the past by Philips in Eindhoven. And we are doing this on the 6th and 7th floor. And on the 7th floor with the small windows, that's where our indoor farm is based. During the daytime, the curtains are closed. The windows are always closed, but the curtains are closed. We don't want any daylight to get in. We don't like that. And then at nighttime, we open the curtains so that people can almost look inside the indoor farm. And on the other side of our building, there is the railway. And people in trains are sending messages to each other, what the hell's going on over here. So there is no reason to open then, just then showing the world what we are doing. So we started back in 2005. Actually, Leanne, my wife, and I started back in 1989, looking at a different way at crops and how they grow. And actually we spent more than 5 years on making mathematical algorithms that explain and predict the growth of plants. Everything in nature is really maths. It's amazing how you can learn the algorithms and then later apply them in order to increase yield, quality, timing, etc. So that's what we have been doing over the time. 2005, we came with the idea that why are we doing agriculture in nature? Why are we doing agriculture in greenhouses? It's so difficult. There is always, it's too hot, too cold, there is too much light or not enough, it's raining or it's drought. So what would the ideal house for plants look like? So we started prototyping in 2005. We were the first that asked themselves, why are plants green? They are green for a very simple reason. In white light, they absorb red and blue, and they transmit and reflect what they can't absorb, and that's the green. So it's not smart to give plants green light because they can't do photosynthesis with that one, but they love the red and the blue. So step by step, we learned more and more and applied it over the years. So one thing that I have to explain to you is that plants don't really like nature. So what plants can do very well, and they're really masters in that, is that they can adapt to every suboptimal circumstance. So they will survive in a dry summer or a wet summer when it's cold or hot, and their goal is, at the end of the summer, I want to produce one seed. I want to replicate myself. But that's not what we need plants to do for us. We eat them. They are part of our food. And then nature is not a great place to do this. This is an example of the first time in history we were able to grow tomatoes in a greenhouse that was totally blocked from the daylight. So it's a closed environment. It could be an area like this one, no daylight at all, and we give them everything that they need, and we took away everything that they did not like. And tomatoes are really difficult to grow if you really have to control every parameter that is involved. And this was a few years ago that we first succeeded to grow beautiful, really tasty and nutritious tomatoes in an indoor farm. So we were thinking, we are now with a lot of people on this planet, about 7 billion, and if the stories are true, there will be 10 billion within the next 30, 40 years. So our thought was, if we are with so many people, we need more nature instead of less nature. And you know all that we cut down millions of hectares of trees in the Amazon rainforest in order to grow soybean. And we think that's not the right way to do it. So what we actually say is, we need more nature to make this planet attractive for people to live. And that means that we have to separate agriculture from nature. So actually what we are saying is that agriculture, at least partly, should be done in a very high-tech way, and that allows us to give back millions of hectares of current agriculture back to nature. This is how we do it. We have a building that is closed, and on one side of the building we build a plenum wall, and on the opposite side of the building, could be 50, 60 meters further away, there is a similar wall with a plenum. And then we make airflow from the one side of that indoor greenhouse to the other side of the greenhouse. And in that laminar airflow, the plants are growing, the plants take up the carbon dioxide that we give them. We are all very concerned about carbon dioxide in the air, but plants love it. They would love to have 3 times as much as there is in the air today. They could even double yield if that would happen. So that's what we do in our indoor farms. We are at 2-3 times the ambient level of carbon dioxide. And then the air flows from one side to the other side, takes up the water that plants evaporate. We make them evaporate exactly the amount of water that they need. And then at the other side, there is a plenum wall that sucks up the air, brings it back through a duct to a machine room where we condition the air again. And so in this way, every 100 seconds, every cubic meter of air has gone through the leaves of our crops and then go back to the technical area. And then the next step, that is, we've done this once in the United States, is that we are adding levels. So instead of traditional agriculture that we do on one level, we can stack different layers on each other. It could be 10 layers. So we are able to use the footprint on this earth really efficient. We can grow every crop. There is no crop that could not been grown. We could do apples or corn or wheat, but those are not the crops that we are looking at today, because economically they are not financially feasible. If you look at the real price of food and at the real effect of growing soybeans in the Amazon forest area, there might be a good reason to even grow those crops in a more sophisticated way. But we started with vegetables, herbs, and some fruits, and we call this organic 2.0. It's different from the organic as we know it, but actually it's totally aiming for the same goals as organic always has been doing. So we can grow tomatoes, cucumbers, bell peppers, lettuce, anything, and we can even grow beautiful flowers. This is an example of roses that really scent again. We lost them because nobody wants to grow them anymore, but we can grow roses that have a beautiful scent. We put them in our toilet, and it's the best place actually to be in our offices. We called our company 7 Steps to Heaven. It's of course a funny name. We did it on purpose because everybody asks to explain it, so that's what I will do. It's named after a composition of Miles Davis, who was a famous trumpetist, and trumpetists can make any music composition just using 3 valves, and that's exactly what we do. So we make plants happy by giving them enough water and nutrients and carbon dioxide, but in the end, we play with just 3 buttons. It's temperature, it's light, and it's the level of evaporation. And we can make any plant composition with those 3, and we can make any plant and every stage of growth really grow very well. So this way of looking at agriculture has a lot of advantages. We are 100% sure about our harvest. There is no way that drought or a disease could kill our plants. It's very safe. We use 0 pesticides. And if there is something happening like a spider mite, there is always a natural predator that some people grow and that we buy and that we put in our farm to eat spider mites. It's extremely fresh. Today, the food that we buy at the supermarket is often being harvested days or even weeks ago. And then the Netherlands is actually paradise for food because it's cheap and it's abundant. But there are so many places on this planet where food travels for weeks from a farmer to a retail store and finally to a plate. We throw away about 40% of all agriculture production worldwide because production and demand do not match at all. So we are making our vegetables much more nutritious. I will explain a little more how we do that. We hardly use any water. We use 1 liter of water for 1 kilogram of tomatoes, and there is no way that you could use less. We use no pesticides. We have a great shelf life. If plants grow at a very stable speed, all cells have the same shape and size, which makes it a very strong construction. So if you put them in the refrigerator, they will maybe last for 2 or 3 times the time that we are used to. Because we are growing local for local on a much smaller scale than agriculture is doing today, we have 0 waste as long as we know the demand or the stats of the supermarkets that we are supplying. There's a lot to be learned over there because we can only produce what the market needs if the market tells us what they need. We create local jobs for local food. Our food is much tastier than we are used to. Even for the Dutch supermarkets, it's a radical change. And then we are not aiming for cheap. Cheap is so cheap. We are aiming for affordable. And then we appreciate food much more, and it should be accessible for everybody on this planet. So actually, we have our crop on a string, and we exactly know how to control it. So what we do is, and this is a little explanation about the aim of Organic 2.0, plants are unique in making energy, sugars, glucose, out of carbon dioxide and light and water. The first level that they are aiming for is not to die. How can I stay alive? So they need sugars to stay alive. But if photosynthesis is on a higher level, they are able to become bigger, to grow, to make new leaves, to make flowers, roots, tubers, etc. But then there is a very interesting 3rd level. And that's the level that there is still energy left over after they did maintenance and growth. And that level, plants start producing what we call secondary metabolites, and they use them as a protecting mechanism against aphids, fungi, But they also make some interesting secondary metabolites to attract bumblebees for pollination. And these secondary metabolites are complex organic molecules that most of the time only plants can make. And many of these can't even be copied in a laboratory. So the pharmaceutical industry has taken full advantage of this and has copy-pasted and IP'd the most simple ones. But there is an abundance left over. There are more than 100,000 of these molecules being recognized and described, and many of these have been used for decades or centuries in traditional Chinese, South African, or other areas medicine. So there is something that we can do now that never could be done on purpose, and that might be very interesting if you look at medicine. So what we say is that food could be so tasty and healthy that it partly, and maybe more than partly, could replace artificial medicines as we're using them today. And then the next step is that we are all different. We do different jobs, we have different ages. I might have an issue with my liver that needs some support. So in the nearby future, it would be great if we could even personalize our food that takes full responsibility for our ways, our individual ways of living. So doing this, food should be grown next door. We should communicate with the people. They should have maybe a meal box that holds the food for me, that takes care of my way of living and my body. So what Christophe did, one of our people, is just put one of our farms next to the river Maas in Maastricht. And a farm of this size could actually grow all the food that we need over here, giving us all the advantages that are connected with indoor farming. To give you an example, we only need 1 square meter of growing area to grow about 200 grams of fresh food every day of the year. It would be extremely tasty, nutritious, and affordable. Not cheap, affordable. So looking at Maastricht with about 623,000 people, we need 3 soccer fields with 10 layers, and we could grow all the fresh produce for the whole city of Maastricht. If you take one step further, 10 billion people on this planet by 2050, that means 10,000 square kilometers of growing area in indoor farms. That means 1/4 of the Netherlands in just 1 layer. So this is really different from what we are used to. In theory, we could feed all people on this planet, supply them with a daily portion of 200 grams on 1/4 of the Netherlands. But we wouldn't do that, of course, in this way. We would spread that 1/4 of the Netherlands over all cities in the world, make it relatively small scale and super local for local. So if we look at city planning, we think that a smart city does not start with a smart grid for energy or water or waste or mobility. It should start with a smart grid for local food production. And once that local food production with all the advantages mentioned is taking place, the other grids are easily to be connected. So local food production changes local mobility. It changes the water use, it changes waste, and it changes, of course, the level of energy that we take. So a local food system can be applied all over the world. We are making plans to make more speed in this because it's a hell of a job to feed 10 billion people in a new way, and it would add a lot of advantages to every city. So this is our mission. We are not saying that we're going to feed the world, but at least with our team, we are doing our best to contribute to a much smarter way of producing much better food than we are used to. So it's also a call to mayors and governments and architects to start changing and redesigning the way that we look at cities today. So coming back to Steve Jobs, he says there are interesting things happening at that intersection of biology and technology, and we must say, we agree. Thank you.